Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, think about it the last time the power went out. Maybe just flickered. That feeling you got, it wasn't just, oh, inconvenience, was it? It was something deeper, that little pulse quickening feeling. That jolt of adrenaline when it suddenly goes dark. Almost everyone feels that. Kids, adults, doesn't matter. Today, we're really diving into nyctophobia, yeah, the fear of the dark. Our mission really is to get past the sort of simple monsters under the bed idea and look at the real forces at work. How evolution kind of hardwired us, how our own minds create fear when things are uncertain, and maybe what we can actually do about it. We want to figure out what feeling anxious in the dark tells us about, well, the human mind itself. Now, before we get into the weeds here, just a quick thing. If you're finding this useful, if you like what we're doing, please do check out Mind Expansion Daily. You'll find loads of great deep dives like this one. And please hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, liking it helps the algorithm notice us. It really boosts our exposure so more people can find this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you really like the info we're sharing, consider buying us a coffee maybe. The link's right there in the description. It helps us keep doing this.
Totally. And one more thing we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Do you agree with how we're summing this up? Disagree? Let us know. Oh, and tell us where you're listening from. We're trying to grow our reach worldwide, so knowing where you are helps a ton.
Okay, so back to that near universal feeling you mentioned. That's crucial. Because this isn't just some, quirky little phobia. It's a response. Deeply rooted, shaped over millions of years. Darkness, for our ancestors, always meant more risk. Simple as that.
Hmm.
Okay, let's start unpacking that, beginning with the survival instinct. Makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. It sounds like a successful adaptation looking back. For early humans, sunset wasn't just the end of the day. It was like their whole security system just vanished. Darkness meant danger you couldn't see, predators potentially lurking.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If you couldn't spot a threat in the dim light back then, well, you probably weren't around long enough to pass on your genes. Not being able to see clearly was a massive vulnerability. So evolution's answer was basically hyperalertness.
Oh, okay.
When the light fades, the first thing that happens biologically is your amygdala. That's the brain's fear center, right?
Yeah.
It just kicks into high gear, puts the whole system on red alert, ready to detect any possible threat.
So the brain's calculation is like, better safe than sorry. Better to waste a bit of energy being jumpy than risk missing something deadly.
That's it, precisely. The better safe than sorry principle in action. When the visual information gets weak, the brain just cranks up the caution level. Laid out.
Yep.
And research backs this up. There was a big review back in 2018, I think, in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews. It showed exactly that. Limited visual input makes the brain's threat detection systems hyperactive. It's not even that we see danger. It's that our brain becomes convinced danger might be there, and it reacts instantly. Our sort of primal wiring hasn't really caught up with light bulbs yet.
That's a great point. If we've evolved so much and live in well-lit homes now, why hasn't that instinct just faded? Is the brain always kind of lagging behind our technology?
Oh, absolutely. Evolution moves super slowly. Our basic operating system was designed for the savannah and not the suburbs. But that's actually where psychology comes in. It helps explain how we go from just being alert to feeling genuine fear.
Right. And this is where it gets really fascinating for me. Moving past the biology to, the power of our own minds, how does just the absence of light turn our pretty sophisticated brains into these storytellers, churning out terrifying scenarios?
Yeah, so we shift gears, right? From pure survival instinct to what psychologists call the fear of the unknown. The human brain just hates a vacuum, especially a visual one. So when there's no clear information coming in, our mind rushes to fill in the blanks. And guess what it fills them with?
Uh-oh. Worst case scenarios.
Pretty much always the worst case scenario. We don't just see a shadow, we imagine a threat. An intruder, some creature, maybe something supernatural we learned about as kids. And the real kicker is, once our brain cooks up that story, it has a hard time telling the difference between that imagined threat and a real one. It treats the possibility almost like a certainty.
That completely explains that classic feeling. You're walking down a dark hallway, glimpse something weird, and you get that horrible jolt of fear, only to realize, oh, wait, it's just my coat hanging on the rack.
Exactly. The coat rack example is perfect. That's imaginative overdrive. And that sudden, intense reaction shows something interesting. Ambiguous stuff. Those unclear shapes in the dark, they can actually trigger our threat detection more strongly than seeing something clearly dangerous. There's a study, I think 2015, Psychological Science, that showed this. Uncertainty makes the brain work harder, react more intensely. It can't be sure what it is, it assumes the worst.
Okay, but we're not automatically scared of the dark when we're born, are we? It feels like something that gets reinforced.
Yeah.
So how do our personal histories, maybe culture, feed into this primal
Oh,
thing?
hugely. Childhood experiences are definitely key. Maybe a really scary power outage happened, or, being told scary stories at bedtime, or even being punished by being left alone in a dark room. We start linking darkness with feeling vulnerable or abandoned pretty early on.
Right.
But then culture just keeps piling it on. Think about media, horror movies, folklore books. Darkness is almost always where the bad stuff happens, isn't it? Where the villain hides, the ghost appears, the jump scare gets you.
So we're kind of conditioning ourselves through movies and stories, training our brains to fear these fictional threats, and then that feeling sticks around even when the lights are low.
You got it. There's research on this too. Media psychology studies, one from 2020 I recall, found a direct link. More exposure to scary media equals more anxiety in low-light situations. It's like we're teaching our deep brain structures.
Hmm.
Dark is danger.
Wow.
And what's really interesting chemically is what happens in the brain when the lights go down. Your prefrontal cortex, that's your rational thinking, decision-making part, kind of takes a back seat. And the amygdala, the emotional survival driver, it grabs the steering wheel.
So logic basically gets muted,
Bro,
and it's pure survival mode kicking in.
that's the fight or flight response, yeah.
Yeah.
It overrides almost everything else, and it's fast. Stress hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, they flood your system.
Mm.
That's what creates the physical feeling of fear.
Yeah.
Heart racing, breathing gets shallow, palms sweaty. You don't just think fear, you feel it chemically. And this state of hypervigilance, it's not just about seeing things. A 2019 study, Nature Communications, I believe, showed it ramps up activity in hearing and visual processing areas together. We're straining to pick up any sign of danger, which is exactly why the tiniest creak in the house at night can make you jump, even though you know the house always makes noises.
Okay, so putting this all together, this fear is actually pretty normal. It's ancient biology mixed with modern psychology and culture. So if someone listening recognizes this in themselves, what does understanding all this actually mean for, like, managing it, coping with nyctophobia?
Well, the first big step, honestly, is just knowing this stuff, reframing it intellectually, understanding that feeling isn't a personal failing, it's just an overactive security system.
Yeah.
That alone can be powerful. Then, in terms of managing it, it's about consciously trying to rewire those automatic reactions.
How do you do that?
The gold standard is probably exposure therapy. But people often think that means something drastic, like being locked in a dark closet. It's not that. It's gradual, controlled. You start small, maybe sit in a room that's just dimly lit, maybe with the door cracked open a bit, or with blinds open, letting in some street light. Then over time, you slowly increase the darkness. You're basically teaching your amygdala. See? Darkness is okay. It's predictable. You can handle this. You desensitize it.
Ah, so you're reducing the uncertainty factor bit by bit, making the environment feel neutral again.
Exactly. Another really useful tool is mindfulness. When your imagination starts running wild, the coat rack monster scenario, mindfulness techniques pull your attention back to right here, right now. Deep breathing, maybe focusing on the feeling of your feet on the floor or the texture of a blanket, grounds you in the present, stops the imagination from filling that dark void with scary stuff.
And what about actively trying to change how you feel about the dark, like changing the association?
Yeah, that's reframing. You consciously connect darkness with neutral things or even positive ones. Like for most people, darkness is essential for good sleep. Right.
Mm.
So instead of dark means danger, you actively think dark means rest, quiet, recharging.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you link it to meditating or just the cozy feeling of being under the covers. If you keep building those positive or neutral associations, it weakens the automatic link to fear.
That makes sense. I think the source material mentions someone trying to sit in total darkness for an hour as a challenge.
Right. That's a more intense example of intentional exposure.
Mm.
It shows that even if you feel the fear, you can sit with it, survive it. And doing that, facing it head on, really helps rewire those deep emotional responses over time. It's about taking back control, basically.
Mhm.
When you boil it down, this fear of the dark, it's really a fascinating look at how we handle uncertainty in general. It's this complex mix of ancient programming, modern influences, and our own personal psychology. And by exploring something like nyctophobia, you actually learn a lot about yourself, how your mind works with ambiguity, and how you can build resilience against those old hardwired instincts.
So we've covered quite a bit here. The primal survival instinct, the way our imagination can run wild in the absence of information, and that chemical cascade in the brain that puts fear ahead of logic. And here's something to maybe chew on after this. If confronting the fear of the dark isn't just about turning on a light, but about managing these ancient responses,
Mhm.
where else in our modern lives might our brains be stuck in that better safe than sorry mode unnecessarily? Maybe with taking calculated risks or public speaking or even just social situations. Could our primal instincts be holding us back more than we realize? That's something to think about. And hey, one last reminder, if you got value out of this deep dive, maybe consider buying us that coffee. The link's in the description and it really helps us out. Also, don't forget to comment, agree, disagree, we want to hear it. And definitely let us know where you're tuning in from. We love seeing our listeners around the globe. Thanks so much for joining us today as we stepped into the shadows of the human mind.